The pastor's expression darkened. You just destroyed him. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Number you did. Reverend Michael clenched his jaw, then exhaled, shaking his head. We need to control this before it gets worse. Hannah's stomach twisted. What do you mean? His gaze was cold. Joe will tell his mother, and then the church. My entire ministry, my family, will be ruined. She swallowed hard. I won't lie for you anymore. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. Then pray that baby isn't mine, Hannah. Because if it is, I won't let it ruin me. Fear gripped her, but she lifted her chin. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Days passed without a word from Joe. Hannah didn't know if he would ever speak to her again. Then one evening, he showed up at her door. She braced herself for more anger, but his expression was unreadable. I don't know how to process this, he admitted, but I loved you, Hannah. I still do, and I don't know how to just stop. Her breath hitched. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need to know. Are you still in love with him? She shook her head, fresh tears spilling over. It was never love, just something I got lost in. Joe let out a long breath. Then we'll take it one step at a time. But first, we need a DNA test. Hope flickered in her chest. You mean you're willing to stay? I don't know yet, he admitted, but I need to know if this baby is mine before I decide. Hannah nodded. Okay. The truth was finally out. Now, all that was left was to face whatever came next. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and uncertainty. Hannah sat stiffly beside Joe, her fingers curled into her lap. The DNA test had been done, and now all they could do was wait. Joe was quiet, his face unreadable. The weight of the betrayal still hung between them like an invisible wall, and though he had agreed to be there, he hadn't touched her, hadn't reassured her. She understood. She had broken him. When the nurse finally walked in with the sealed envelope, Hannah's heartbeat thundered in her ears. Joe took it with steady hands, but hesitated before opening it. Whatever it says, she whispered, I want you to know I'm sorry. Joe didn't respond. He tore the envelope open, his eyes scanning the document. His jaw clenched, his fingers tightened around the paper. Then he let out a sharp breath and placed the result on the table. The baby was his. Relief flooded Hannah, but before she could react, Joe stood abruptly. I need to go. His voice was tight. Joe, he was already halfway out the door. Hannah rushed after him, following him outside where his car was parked. I have to see him, he muttered, mostly to himself. She grabbed his arm. Please, Joe, just let it go. We have what we need. We can move on now. He turned to her, his eyes burning with a storm of emotions. Let it go? My father slept with the woman I wanted to spend my life with. He tried to make you get rid of my child. You want me to just let that go? Tears welled in her eyes. I just don't want you to do something you'll regret. Joe's jaw tightened. I've regretted enough already. And then he got in his car and drove off. Reverend Michael was in his study when Joe stormed in, slamming the door behind him. The pastor barely had time to react before Joe grabbed the framed picture of their family and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. Michael shot up from his chair. What do you think you're doing? Joe's chest heaved. You're a hypocrite, a liar. You spent years preaching about morality, about honor, and yet you did this to me, to my child? Michael's expression didn't change. Lower your voice. Joe laughed bitterly. Why? Because you don't want Mother to hear? Or the congregation? You don't want them to know what kind of man you really are? The pastor's lips pressed into a thin line. We all make mistakes, Joe. I made mine, but I refuse to let you destroy me over this. Joe